Hello, empowered woman. Welcome to this episode of the Empowered Woman Podcast. Today, I talked with Leeann Rybakov. She's a board-certified functional medicine health coach and takes a personalized, multidimensional approach in working with clients to help them reach their goals. We talked about how, although food and fitness are very important, overall well-being is so much more than what we eat and how much we exercise. At the root of it all is our happiness. Leeann shares a valuable insight on how to achieve sustainable lifestyle behavior changes and, in turn, lifelong health. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Empowered Woman Podcast, the #1 show on personal growth, visibility, and profit for women entrepreneurs. If you're wanting to start believing in yourself, giving yourself permission to succeed, and let your voice be heard to make an impact in the world as an entrepreneur, this is the place for you. I am so glad that you're here. My name is Marta Spurk, and I'm your host, triplet mom, woman empowerment coach, and all things motivation extraordinaire. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode. Hi, Leeann. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Marta. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, I am so excited for us to connect. So, Leeann, I have to say you are very persistent, and I'm very excited for us to connect and to hear more about your story. But you've been sharing some with me on Instagram. So she found the podcast, and then she went on to read the book. So I'm super excited to hear more from you. We have lots of things in common. Also, not being from the US and doing this entrepreneurial mom thing.
Yes.
So I am very excited to have you share your journey, more about your business and your expertise that is so helpful for women. So go on ahead, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you again for having me on the show. And I'm just absolutely obsessed with the way that you empower women because we need that as much as possible. So my name is Leeann. I am a functional medicine health coach. I work with women, predominantly moms, to help them with their digestive health issues, to help them feel better in their bodies, to regain their energy, to empower them with a toolbox of things that they can go back to on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis so that they could always know how to take care of themselves. I think it's so important for moms to really have those tools. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle, and it's completely personalized because no two women, no two moms, no two bodies are the same.
Yes. Oh, I love that so much. It's so great. And how did you get started with all of this? Where did this all begin? Has it been your career path? Did it begin after having kids? Tell me more.
Yeah. So I think that I've always been passionate about health and wellness. I definitely have always been passionate about food. I think I was peeled my first potato when I was 6 with probably 7 with my mom. Ultimately, that passion led me to culinary school, and I started my own snack food company. It was a healthy snack food made out of buckwheat and a few ingredients. I was also, I think, always born to be an entrepreneur. I have entrepreneurial stories dating back to when I was 11 selling chocolates. But I did have the snack food company, and I actually started it when I was pregnant with my first child. Started it at a very hot farmer's market. I was very passionate about it, but 5 years into it, it got very good distribution. It was in Whole Foods, but it was really working my health into the ground. I had no patience for my children. I did not prioritize them. I could say that honestly now, and it's a completely different story today. But it really came to the point where I just was not living a healthy lifestyle, and my coping skills were not good, and I kind of didn't know what to do. So at one point I had to come to terms with the fact that this just wasn't serving me, wasn't really making me a good mom or a good woman, not kind to myself. And after some soul searching, I ended up closing the company and looking into the health space. And I was really passionate about functional medicine. It's just a different approach to health. Mm-hmm. So I got my training, and I accidentally coached someone and just saw the reward of seeing a woman thrive. And that really led me to want to get more training. And I've been health coaching ever since. And I love every single minute of it.
That's so wonderful.
Yes. And it makes me feel good about me too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And thank you for being upfront about your story and how it took you a while into going down that route to then realize this is the person that I was being, and it came up to a point where I
didn't resonate, or I wasn't feeling good about it anymore. And that is something that I feel more people need to speak up about. More women need to speak up, because at times we look from the outside and we see these women being so successful. Wow, Leeann, your snacks were on Whole Foods. Your life must be amazing. And not to say that it wasn't, but there were certain points, certain parts of it that you weren't super happy about. And it took you a while to recognize that. And maybe people looking from the outside in wouldn't have noticed that. And that's where many other women are in that same space of, sure, you're being successful in terms of the recognition, in terms of the income, the figures, right? But what about the family life? What about your health? So many people sacrifice their health, their sleep, because they're in that hustle, right? Of what's the next big milestone that I'm going to be reaching with my business? And is that really the definition of success, right? Or is it a holistic definition of success? And we've had other guests here on the show talk about that if you're being successful in your business, but your relationship with your spouse sucks, then are you really being successful? And the same thing as a mom with your relationship with your kids. So thank you so much for being upfront about that and not being afraid. I'm sure it was a little bit scary, but still taking the risk of, I'm going to close this down and I'm going to start something else, something different. And then being able to help women on a larger scale now with the work that you do. I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Absolutely. I think that what you just said completely resonated with me, because I was initially, when I started my business, I was so motivated by my passion, but in the end, it kind of became this extrinsic motivation where like I had to prove something to someone. And in the end, and like we say, we look to other people and we think that it all looks so glamorous, right? So when you have that conversation with yourself about what is success, because I kept thinking no matter what milestone I hit, I didn't think I was successful. I kind of wanted to have that outside, people saying that, oh, you're in Whole Foods, it's great. But like, Whole Foods isn't so glamorous, right? Well, people don't know, but you're absolutely right. It's like, what is success to you, but what is health to you as well? And that's so different across the board, right? Every woman, every mom, I feel like has a different definition for themselves, but it really does take some soul searching sometimes to really know how to properly treat your body, and which is not just your body, it's your mind, it's yourself, it's your relationship with yourself, but it's your relationship with everybody else. That is a reflection of your relationship with yourself.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. That's a good stopping point for women to be like, am I really honoring my own health? Right? Because we talk so much about that postpartum. I feel like there's a big talk right there because that's the beginning of the big struggle, but it continues on throughout the years. How old are your kids? Do you have more than one?
I have two kids. One of them just turned 5 and the other one is turning 7 in August. Yeah. And when I say, again, just a few years ago, or when they were born, the first couple of years, I was so involved in this business. And like I was saying before, I just didn't know how to prioritize everything. And when my body was like shutting down, my mind was shutting down. And now I understand the connection. Like now I fully understand that, there's so many intrinsic parts of your day that have to come together for you to be present for yourself and your kids and your family. And it took some learning, but this is why I absolutely love what I do, because most moms are having a hard time. Kids are not easy, and the hardest part is finding that time to be yourself while also being a mom. Like we don't have to lose ourselves to our kids. We're too young. We still have our whole lives ahead of us. You know how they say that about the kids? They have their whole lives ahead of them. We have our whole lives ahead of us.
That's such a great reminder. Well, and one thing before we get into more of the health, but I think we're probably going to get into that as well. But I want to stop at this point because I think it's so relevant to busy women entrepreneurs who are, going after their dreams and all the while trying to be present with their kids. And at times it just seems kind of like that impossible paradox. Because here I am. And I love what you said. Now I can be honest and say that back then I wasn't prioritizing them, or I wasn't being as present as I would have liked. Because I feel this so hard. Like there were people in my life, like my husband and family members, who were constantly reminding me, and I couldn't see it. I was like, no, this is part of it. This is what I need to do. And it didn't matter how many times they told me. It took that journey and specific steps and different things in the journey for me to be like, wow, something has got to give, something needs to change. And then looking back, being like, yeah, I wasn't really doing it, but I wouldn't have listened back then, So even at times when people are like, what's the advice that you would give yourself when you were first starting your business? Or what's the advice you would have given yourself when you first had your kids? I like that. I understand the concept of that. But on the same hand, it's like, I wouldn't have listened to myself. Even if my future self had, transported, I would be like, go away. This is not what I'm doing right now. I wouldn't have listened. So I'm trying to think of if there is a mom that's listening to us right now, maybe going through that, and she's kind of in denial and she's not there yet. I would love to hear from your perspective. What is something helpful that you think would be helpful for them to be like, how do you snap out of this and really start tuning in more to then, consider your health and consider the well-being of the people in your life. So let's see what you got.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also really love what you just said, because it's that whole thing. We have to sometimes make our mistakes to learn from them. Mm-hmm. And I recently heard someone say that our mistakes are our feedback. Like that our actions and we're always getting feedback on what we should be doing. Yeah. And you're right. We need to sometimes learn. I would say, there's so many different places to go with this, right? And it's, it could be, you could tap in really deep and sit down and really do this deep dive into how you feel. But really every person has their own goals in life. So sometimes saying like, what is the most important thing to you in your life? Like maybe sitting down and writing those 3 things down. I work predominantly, most moms, and I have to be honest, because when I talk about bloating, and most moms like, and I always say like, do you want to fit into your favorite jeans? And this is not a weight loss situation. This is about getting your body to work the way that it should. And when it does, you do end up fitting into your jeans, because bloat and your digestive health is really a reflection of not just what you're eating, but how well you're sleeping and your stress. So this is where I would answer your question and say, like, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10 with your stress? Like 10 being off the rails, right? What's causing you the most stress in your life? And what are the goals? Where do you want to be? What's most important? What's the priority? Sometimes our priorities get really lost. And when you are motivated by external things, like you were saying before, like just like, even sometimes like trying to prove a point to someone, right? You're doing it for the wrong reasons. And that is the same idea about how our bodies look. Like, who do you want to look good for? Like, and when you start to feel good, you do start to look good. Mm-hmm. And it's about, it really comes down to self-love as well. So working with moms, I really do. And I say moms because it's a different dynamic. Everyone has their things going on, right? But we do have these other humans that we kind of prioritize. Yeah. And they could be really hard. If I have to speak honestly, I look forward to Mondays, off they go. Yeah. Kids are hard, but what do you want your kids to turn out to be like? How do you want them to be like? When I was going through the whole company stuff and I didn't, I would yell at them. Like now I don't really yell at them very much because they started yelling at me because they're mirroring what I'm doing. So now, you have to forgive, you have to move on, you have to look forward. But I would say if you are in a place where you feel like something's off, your gut is letting you know, and your gut is your second brain. So sit down with yourself, take 20 minutes and just write it down. Like, what are your 3 top, what's mostly important to you, the top 3 top, and then where are you on the stress? Like, is it your job? Let's find ways. You can't remove stressors in your life, but you can find ways to manage them better. Yeah. And that's really important for your body and mind.
That's so good. Okay. So let's get to the bloating and different things in terms of nutrition that women may not be aware of that is causing them these other things. And that oftentimes, like you said, has nothing to do with weight loss, because that is something that can trigger so many other things, right? So if we're just talking about, no, it's about health, it's not about necessarily the genes, but it will affect whether they're fitting looser or not. Tell us more about some of these things that as you're working with women, you realize that they're not really aware of, or maybe some misconceptions in the industry, because there's a lot of that in whatever niche you're in, that people play on certain specific things to make money. That's just the nature of it, because it's easier. It's not sustainable. People don't understand that, and they fall into some traps, and it's just a nightmare. So go on.
Oh my gosh, there's so many great questions in there. I'm so excited. So I have to just say, I have to talk about the fact that there's all these misconceptions and marketing things. So I come from a place where I did have a snack food company. I was in the CPG business. So I fully understand what goes into manufacturing a consumer packaged good that hits the shelf that has like all the things you want to hear, like low calorie, like fat, whatever it is, right? Like, so I would start by saying that I'm going to talk about two things: diets, or something like keto, where it's supposed to be really good for you. And you watch all these commercials or you watch these women losing a lot of weight. First of all, no single diet is sustainable. It's just not, because it just asks too much of one person at once. It's also geared towards the masses. It's not, it's not personalized to your lifestyle, what you like to eat, how you like to spend your time, what your schedule is like. So no diets work. And if there's not someone out there that's like, I've been on a diet for the last 30 years and it works for me, that's wonderful. But for the most part, diets are also very stressful. They're highly restrictive. Like, they're so highly restrictive. And when I work with women, the first thing people sometimes start to worry that I'm going to be like, well, you're going to have a green smoothie, you're going to have this for lunch. Absolutely not. The first thing I do is ask for a 3-day food journal, not because I want to criticize or look at what you're eating to judge, but I want to see what you like to eat. Let's find ways for you to eat the foods you love, so you're not eating them in a guilty way, which is in and of itself going to cause bloating, that you are not over. There's so many factors, right? So from a nutritional standpoint, when we talk about our bodies, I would say diets just never work. There's too much pressure. It's another thing to be negative about. I also always say, focus on the yes rather than the no. So instead of saying like, I can't have this ice cream, right? You say, I can have these blueberries. And I know that sounds like it's easier said than done, but okay, you had ice cream. That's great. Maybe go for a walk. Maybe do a face mask. Show yourself some love, like nurture your body instead of punishing yourself afterwards. And the reason I say this is because punishment is stress. Stress is toxic. Toxins get stored in our fat tissue, and then we have those genes that don't fit. So it's not just about the ice cream. It's actually more about the stress of eating it than it is about the ice cream itself. So it's not really what we eat, it's how we eat it. And sometimes how much, obviously, too. And then as far as all the marketing out there, just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean it's healthy. And the best way to eat, and I'm sure this has been, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here, but it's really to eat whole foods, things that grow in the earth, less processed foods. Now, there are certain things that we do need to eat that are in our pantry, but it's real. There are big distinctions between something that is going to make you bloated and not. And it could be as simple as like your nut butter. So nut butter, something that's typically very healthy, like almond butter or peanut butter, it should only be the nut itself. If you look in your pantry and your nut butter has palm oil in it or sugar in it, those are ingredients that are going to make you bloated and inflamed. There's a big craze with drinking things or eating things that have artificial sweeteners. And I know that we're no longer eating sweet and low, or we're not having, but stevia is in a lot of things, as is monk fruit. And when you're eating things that are artificially sweetened, first of all, they disrupt your gut, which again will cause bloating. I could talk about the gut forever and ever, but also it actually causes more cravings because you are eating something that tastes like it should have 1,000 calories, but it has 0. And now for the rest of the day, your stomach is going to be asking, where are my 1,000 calories? So when you're eating something that tastes really sweet, but is artificially sweetened, you're going to have more sugar cravings. It doesn't work. So eat as close to the earth. When it comes to the pantry, I do have I spent some time pulling together my favorite pantry items. We could share it with the audience, where it could be just simple swaps. But the things I would look out for in your pantry, the rule of thumb is, if you can't pronounce an ingredient, probably shouldn't be eating it. Look out for things like seed oils, like palm oil, sunflower oil. Look out for sugar. It's literally in everything. Sugar is the number one thing that's going to make your body feel inflamed. So when you go to those gluten-free vegan products, and I'm using air quotes because they're supposed to be healthy, they're actually loaded with, just look at like a gluten-free pretzel. There's like probably 20 ingredients in there. So the pantry is a great place to start. I would focus on stress, and I would focus on the pantry. And then I would also incorporate some good daily habits, like starting your day with some warm water and lemon. And if you're really ambitious, I love to add a little apple cider vinegar to it. I also have a resource we could share for just daily habits to debloat. Nice. Bloating is our body's way of telling us that something is wrong. We should not be walking around bloated. And if you have something like IBS and you're like, well, this is just how it is, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't. You should be able to wear your favorite clothes. You should not be hiding in, unless you really love them. I do love a good pair of like comfy sweatpants, yeah. but you should feel comfortable in your own clothes.
All these are such great tips, and we'll make sure and put all these resources that you have for the pantry, tips, habits, right? And tips for reducing the bloating. Those are great. Tell us more how you work with clients. Is it mostly one-on-one? Do you have group stuff? What are some of your offers?
Yeah, I actually work solely one-on-one. And it's my 6-week program. After the 6 weeks, all my clients walk away with a toolbox that they know what to do. They feel great. I'm not bragging for myself. I'm bragging for these women, but even a week in, they start to just feel so much better. It's really, in the beginning, I do a very deep dive. We do a deep intake. We do like the 3-day food journal. I immediately pick out the things that like the smallest change will make the greatest difference. I had a mom that came to me, she's vegetarian, and she was just bloated and she actually didn't come from bloating. She just didn't feel like herself. She was having a hard time losing a few pounds. Told her this is not a weight loss program. We're just going to get her to feel good. Yeah. And, being vegetarian sometimes could be a little challenging with getting the right proteins in. She was blown away. Her clothing was fitting again and her skin cleared up. She didn't realize that certain things she was eating was really and again, our skin is also, it's our biggest organ. It's going to tell us if something's wrong. So yes, I do a 6-week program. And my goal is for the person to walk away with all the tools that they need, because health and wellness is never linear. There's going to be ups and downs, but when you hit that down a little bit, you got to have the tools to get back up. And that's what we do.
That's so great. Well, and the whole emphasis that you have on it being an individual journey and customized, which goes hand in hand with, and I love always using the analogy of like fitness, health and fitness, because it's something so visual, especially when people think before and after, whether it be with the skin or with weight loss, comparing pictures and things like that. It really goes hand in hand with our business journey and how we may be looking up at this person and saying, oh, they're in the same niche and they're doing so amazing. Yeah, but they're them. It's their journey. Yes. It's their audience. It's their family dynamics. It's not the same as you. And we have this tendency, we insist on wanting to compare with other people. And that is one of the reasons why I've gotten so big into the whole Enneagram and the personality types and all that. I wanted to touch on that real quick before we get to our rapid fire questions and hear from you on that end, since you also believe in the importance of understanding somebody's routines, understanding their tastes, and then catering something around their lifestyle. And the reason why diets don't work, at least not sustainably. And the same thing goes with somebody following somebody else's formula in terms of their business. Everyone's teaching what worked for them, and it may work for you for a little bit, but probably not long-term until you make that thing yours. And it takes a while to make something yours, because then you have to really experiment, and there's trial and error. And just like what you said, it's not linear. There will be some moments where what worked for a few months is not working anymore. And then you kind of get confused and say, well, I'm broken. Something's happening. And it could be several different things, especially when we talk about health. It could be different stress levels, right? If you're changing jobs or if the economy is going crazy, I don't know. There's always things thrown at us that we don't know. Something is happening with your kid. You're moving houses, right? I don't know, whatever else. So I'd love to hear from you in terms of like the personality things, especially since you've read my book, which I'm super grateful. Which personality type did you resonate with the most, and how that has come into play in your business, but also when it comes to health? I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Oh, I love the book and your podcast. I'm really grateful to be on. So I did the test, and I'm a feeler.
Okay. Yeah.
And that makes complete sense. And I'm type 3, which I think we have that in common.
Yes.
Well, maybe. Mm-hmm. Yes. What really resonated with me is the mindset shift. How you just talk about that it's, perceiving things a certain way, and with our relationship with other people, that it doesn't have to be, things don't have to remain as is. Right. And that it's really like our perception and changing our perception really of ourselves. I think that the biggest thing, and I've kind of known this about myself for a long time, and I like everybody else, hopefully, is a work in progress. So I'm always working on myself. One thing that you and I really had in common that I found so interesting that I never thought about is that I was an accident. And, my parents laugh about it all the time. Like, oh, you were an accident. We didn't even want you. When my mom's like, I didn't even want you. And I'm like, well, I wonder how much that might have affected my self-esteem growing up when, of course, she loved me from the moment I was born. But when we talk like in utero, right? Yeah. And, when now, like, of course, like nobody ever showed me anything but love growing up. I come from a very strong family. But I wonder, and it's interesting also because my son was an accident, and I kept saying and I was crying and didn't know, and he has a different personality than my daughter, so I also wonder about that, right? But there's that. Those are like the little things that you kind of do a deep dive into yourself, and we are so much more in charge of how we live our lives than we think, and sometimes it's easy to be like, put the blame on someone else. Well, I feel this way because of that. But really taking authority of your own feelings, of your own life is so empowering. Like, why give that away? Don't give that away, right? And it's easier said than done. Just having that mindset, and it takes a while. And like you said, like it is a trial and error. And that's why I never tell people to do what I do. Yeah. We explore what works for you. You might not like a green smoothie in the morning. That's okay. But I do, just empowering women to understand that they could be the greatest version of themselves. And it just takes some time to take these small steps, right? Small daily habit changes to really get there. That it's not an overnight thing, just like a diet. Never going to work.
Never going to work. Oh, I love that so much. It's so great. I'm grateful that you were able to have these reflections, and it really helps us as moms too, to understand, not to be hard on ourselves in terms of our behavior and how it's affecting our kids, but to understand that we're really all in the same boat. Maybe we're a few years ahead or behind when our parents, or the mindset has shifted or whatever. But it really is as empowering as it is of a more loving approach to everyone involved.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to our rapid fire. I'd love to hear what you have to say about the 5 steps. Are you ready?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. So first one is notice yourself. What comes to mind?
Strong.
Yes. Next, listen to yourself.
The gut feeling is always going to tell you what needs to go and what needs to stay and what we need more of.
Forgive yourself.
It's the feedback from when I was when my kids were little, and that I have to forgive myself and move on and learn from that and give them my attention in the best way that I can now.
Empower yourself.
Do what makes me happy.
And transform yourself.
Create healthy habits to really empower myself to be the woman that I want to be.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing on your expertise, your story. I'm so excited to get this episode out and have ladies connecting with you and changing their future, their habits and everything. We'll make sure and put all of the resources in the show notes and different ways of connecting with you. Thank you so much, Leeann, for your time.
Thanks, Marta. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to connect with Leeann and check out all the different resources that she mentioned here on the show. All the links are in the show notes. Until next time, bye.